Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to season 2 of Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me comic creators Emily McGuiness and Dan Bridges. So, welcome to the show.
Woo!
What? Oh, yeah.
So, obviously, we're off to a great start here. And now, you both obviously have a lot going on right now. The Kickstarter for Zombie Game, the graphic novel, is currently running. I think you're pretty close to funding if you're not already funded. And so I think the best place to start is, what is the basic premise of Zombie Game and where did it come from for those who don't know, before we dive a little bit more into the story?
All right, you're up, babe. This is
Me.
yeah, that's you.
So the Zombie Game is about a group of college students who go to an end-of-the-year party only to find themselves hunted by the rich in a live-action zombie apocalypse video game.
Yeah, this is kind of cool, and it's a little bit topical. It's got an element of Eat the Rich, maybe sort of flipped upside its head, and a little bit Saw-esque, and a little bit, I don't know, and A Dangerous Game is a good story to tell. It's got that in there a little bit as well. And so where did this premise even come from? Because we have a lot of cool elements in this, and it's a cool concept, and we got this being hunted and trying to beat the game and trying to survive the game, and the game itself might kill you, but you also are trying to figure out how to survive and beat the game type of thing. And that's super interesting. And it's kind of taking this concept of an RPG and turning it into a graphic novel in many ways. And the reader is almost watching it too, like the rich are to some degree. That's how I read it at the very least. So where did that premise come from, and even building that and writing that and developing that? Because that could go very south very quickly if you don't know what you're doing per se.
Yeah, it's a lot of elements to put together.
Yeah, it kind of started off with me trying to figure out something new to do with zombies, right? I'd read The Girl with All the Gifts, which is a book. I didn't really like the movie, but the book was amazing, and it kind of changed my idea of what zombies could be. So I started to think about a little bit out, try to, because you just don't want to do another zombie thing or another monster.
You don't want to repeat The Walking Dead.
Yeah,
because down enough.
There are some amazing zombie and horror aspects, and I just didn't want to recycle the same thing. So I was trying to think of something a little, unique. Because if I didn't put anything or bring anything unique to it, I didn't really want to do it, and I didn't really want to write it. And I came up. So at the same time, there was a bunch of stuff going on. And they had the bath salts in Florida where people were eating people's faces and stuff like that. And then this, and then that book, and then and the Bernie Sanders 1% stuff. And I was kind of like all these thoughts in my head. And then I went, what if somebody could make zombies? Because one other thing I hate about zombies stuff is that when you figure out what kind of zombie it is, or its fatal flaw, then you can kind of defeat it, right? So it's like, well, what if maybe they evolve? Maybe it's like something else, and you have different, something going on. And I was like, well, if you can make them, then you can make different levels, and you can make different types of zombies that then could, you'd have to fight in different ways. And I was like, well, who would do that? Why would somebody do that? That's kind of weird. And then I kind of got that Saw element in, right? So somebody's doing this, and then it's like, well, who could afford to play this game? And then, people were doing those escape rooms, and stuff like that. And it was like, people are paying to play these things. And I went, well, people are people are paying to do really bad stuff to different people. And I'm like, and they go and they hunt exotic animals and stuff like that. And I was like, well, what if this was like some sort of weird, level of game? And that's kind of how it just, and then more questions and why, and came from it. And then it just kind of flowed from there.
And then to even add into this, because people aren't signing up for this. They're getting involuntary brought into it, and they're under the guise of going to a party. And I don't know if they were specifically targeting, young college kids per se, or end of the year college kids, or just anybody who was young and maybe dumb and broke to some degree, looking for a good time. And now you have this complete juxtaposition and this complete, counter where it's like you're in the middle of some fucked up shit. And now you're caught off guard. And that adds a whole nother element to it as well, where it's just like, boom, you're expecting a party. Seems like a party. Everybody's being friendly. And now you're in, I don't want to say a war zone per se, but you're in a very dangerous situation where death is legitly like a doorstep away.
Yeah.
And that adds a whole nother dimension to it. It adds a dimension to it that is tricky and awesome at the same time, and also is like supervillain bad guy stuff. But now you're having rich people doing it, and it kind of shows the evil of humanity a little bit.
Well, that's like I'm a veteran. A lot of my friends and good friends are veterans, and there's this aspect of fighting somebody else's war and kind of being like, at a young age being used in something else for different political reasons, and then you think it's something else, and so there was that whole aspect to it. And then like Terrence, he plays college football, and he's a football player, but he blows his knee out, and they're making tens of millions of dollars off of his body, and he sees none of that. And so there was this aspect of the have and the have-nots, and who's been used and not. And I really, really wanted to show that. And I just thought that, young, end of the year, wanting to blow off steam. And then this is the idea is that this is something that's happened before, that they it's like this is not the first time that this kind of thing has happened. And so this is now the newest thing. So,
but these people are expendable.
Yeah. And they're used to be that way, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that too, because it gets super interesting. Obviously, there is some element of scouting that is thrown into this because there are different levels that people are broken out into. I like the fact that they have little backpacks on, and they mentioned turtle shells. Obviously, I'm a fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I am 28, so it is perfectly acceptable. If I was 30, it would not be.
Still acceptable.
I just make the cut. I just make the cut where it is acceptable. But anyhow, I love the fact that we get that in there, and then they sort of pull it off as a party favor, and then everybody gets assigned different levels. And I'm under the assumption that level 1 is easier than level 2 and level 3 and level 4. And well, obviously that's a nice touch. And well, if these rich people have run this before, then they must know what they're doing in running the game per se, and also maximizing entertainment. And I don't know, and I didn't get to the point, I don't think you guys addressed this, but I think it's a safe assumption that, well, there's probably big money involved in this to some degree. I think it's a safe assumption. And well, you have to maximize that entire profit thing. So we get that thrown in there as a safe assumption. And so what was that like, even just doing the level thing? Because that takes it a step further.
Yeah, that was, so I wanted to pay a little bit of an homage to like classic zombie movies. So each one was kind of a different, classic zombie space. And then it was, all right, different types of zombies in each level, which, would make it more difficult. So your first ones, I thought a lot about like Zelda, and you got to find the keys, right? So there's like, and it's like, and you got like slower zombies and stuff like that. And
then you can actually outrun. And
yeah.
Right. So like they're the easiest level. Like
right.
You can figure it out. You can escape them just by like running away real fast.
Yeah. And then the next level, it's the classic farmhouse, right? But they're faster and they're stronger, and angry. Yeah, and angry. And so it just kind of built upon itself each level, and it was like, all right, I have these. Then how does this happen, and where does this go, and who would do this, and how much money would they pay, and yeah. And
But
then
not
what
to
are they
spoil
going to
it,
do?
but level 4 is a zombie war with all of them together.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And so even I don't want to ruin too much in going into this, but obviously there's a bunch of characters, and obviously there's more characters than we get really insight into. But I think there's 4 or 5 that we get massive insight into, and you can get a free 25-page sampler if you guys and everybody signs up for the email list, and we can talk about that in a second. But you get an idea of some of these people, and so let's talk about the main character, who's Oz. And obviously, Oz is personal to you because he's a veteran. I think he's like 32, so he has way more life experience than probably everybody else. And, well, he is also a freshman, which is sort of cool, too, in this entire story. It's a nice little detail in there. And so he's coming, and I'm not sure what level he gets thrown into, but he sort of likes a girl. And then now he's in this, and he basically says, I want to survive, and that he wants to survive and deal with everything. And obviously he has war experience, he has combat experience, he probably has some form of PTSD, which I think is a safe assumption. And I like Oz, and obviously we take this entire concept with Oz where we're combining a civilian coming back home and now having combat experience and bridging the gap and actually using what he used in combat to survive, and actually using those tactics for practical use and possibly for his friends and even more people who might not necessarily be his friends in this circumstance. So what was that like? And I'm familiar with veteran lingo. I spent about 15 months working in 2 VSOs, so in DC, so Student Veterans of America and the Veterans of Foreign War. So very cool. It touches home for me in many, many ways. But what was that like, building out this character? Because he's thrown into a very unique situation that a non-veteran character would have a much harder time surviving, minus of being a police officer, probably would do okay as well.
So that was kind of in the veteran community, a lot of times people are like, hey, why do we always
have stereotypical veteran type of character?
Yeah.
I think is a good way to put it, where you get this character who is stereotyped in comics, and we don't see, I guess, and I hate to say it this way, and it could sound a certain way, but almost a wounded veteran then surviving. And in this case, Oz has problems, and obviously he has combat scars, but he's now taking this and he's almost becoming a hero, and not necessarily going back into veteran mode, but still civilian now, using those skills in a practical manner. And it kind of breaks that stereotype. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but that's how I viewed it.
No, that's an accurate way. I think that we also wanted to utilize like his, PTSD aspect as not a negative. Like it wasn't something to like superly overcome. It was something that like, because I have a lot of, I had PTSD. I had friends with PTSD and stuff. And it's like that old, it's like, oh, we got PTSD, and we're going to be drinking and all these other kinds of things. And it's like, I know that story and that trope. And I just wanted to put him in a position where instead of where a normal person, like I find that a veteran understands that most of our like society is based upon like a veil of normalcy that we all socially accept, that generally speaking, people aren't just going to punch people in the face if they look at you sideways. And veterans know that that's a very, very thin veil in a lot of different ways. And they're trained and quick to be able to go past that very quickly. And they'll deal with the shit on afterwards. That's kind of what ends up happening. And so there's people that he's now taking care of and working with that are dealing with it in real time. And he's just like, we just go. And instead of that moment and that where everybody's just, and it's just like, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. It's like, to the veteran, it doesn't matter. That's what's happening now. So then we'll deal with it later. And then he has to deal with certain things later in, throughout the book where he has to come to some realizations. But that was that kind of spearhead that I wanted, especially from him, where it's like, look, I don't give a shit if they're zombies or not. They're trying to eat me, so let's go. You know, it's like I'm not gonna worry about like what happened and how this happened. I'm just we go. We gotta figure this out because they were on a timer. And so that is what I wanted to bring to the game itself. And also I wanted to not use PTSD as like a positive, but not show it as like such a negative about everything and every aspect of all, the veteran's life after
Right.
being a veteran.
The story is not just about that. Like, it's
Right.
not just him crying in the corner. Like, we don't meet him, like having a PTSD episode. Like, we meet him living his life and like moving on.
Or trying to figure that out. Cause you're 32, it's like I went to college late, it was weird. People, they treated you differently. You felt weird, kids are on campus and you're older than them, and it's just weird. And that whole aspect of that reality kind of just never really is shown. And I just wanted to show some of that within the confines of this book.
And obviously, and one of the things that makes this very interesting is that, well, these people don't even know what the fuck is going on. And then these zombies / creatures / things come out, and they're not sure if it's a gag. They're not sure if it's a party, joke. They're not sure if they're in an escape room. And, well, obviously, shit hits the fan really quickly. Oz reacts. And that's what sort of kicks things off. And obviously he has that veteran mentality in him, but he also has, obligation to find his friends. And he's obviously has a fancy for a girl, which is a motivator. It's been a motivator for men for centuries, which doesn't, help. It doesn't hurt, I should say, his motivation to go kill a zombie. And so obviously this is super interesting where that even goes, where now they are saying sort of shoot, kill, move, and then he has to deal with everybody else. And even the fact that, and then getting into his sidekick to some degree is his dog Leg, which is very cool. And there's sort of a dark joke in there where obviously Oz has some issues with his leg, and I feel like he has sort of like a bad leg too to some degree, and his dog's leg, and obviously he has an obligation to his dog and all that stuff. So where did that come in, building his dog and leg and all that stuff? Because I know that's also personal.
Yeah, I mean, my dog's name's Leg. He's over there. He's asleep. He is way more like slower than this dog in this in this book. But so like.
And even like adds a little bit of comedy relief because they have to sort of smuggle him into the party and all that stuff. So it's kind of a nice little thing where they're sort of smuggling him in past like the checkers and all that stuff. Yeah. And it adds sort of a nice little breather, I feel, into the story.
His name is actually an army term. So a leg is a derogatory term that airborne people give to people who do not jump out of airplanes because they have to use their legs to walk everywhere. And so
usually it's preempted with dirty, nasty leg. That's kind of the actually how you do it. So it was a lot funnier when I named him than trying to have to explain the joke all the time. But I love the dog anyway, so he's good. Yeah.
And so I like the fact that there's a dog in this story. I think it's a nice touch. And then obviously you mentioned Terrence. And I do want to talk about the rest of the characters because there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on with them. Obviously, this sort of plays in where all of these characters had to be scouted by these rich people for a reason. And Terrence, I think it's Terrence Hightower, I think is his last name. He is this great left tackle football player, sort of blew out his knee. The coach sort of, I guess, indicates that he's done. And then, well, now they're going to this party. Obviously, the school's made a lot of money off of him. And he's probably not going to be drafted with all of his knee issues. And, well, now he's at this party. He's a big guy, but he's in an interesting position now with all this stuff because he's, and I hate to say it this way, but he's almost like a wounded animal that now, how is he going to deal with everything? And so what was that like, having that person in who now has a problem and has a knee problem and is now sort of scouted, and it adds an element of darkness to it. So obviously there's a reason why Terrence is there, and Terrence is very expendable.
Well, I think that the biggest thing about some of this is that I didn't want, I like to write ensembles, and I didn't want to like, I wanted certain people to be in a horror, book that don't necessarily make it through and don't normally aren't there. He is he's somebody that has been used by the system to make a lot of money for the school, and now his like kind of the same way that the veteran has been used for the political reasons and stuff. He has been used by society for entertainment purposes.
Because typically you see like the perfect football player who like has it all and is like the champ and ready to take on like the monster or the thing in the house. And our whole team, but especially Terrence, because he develops such a close relationship with Oz, like they really become each other's wingmen. Like they come together like through the game to actually like form a really great bond.
Yeah.
And a friendship. So it, like Dan said, it was trying to include people that you don't usually see in the genre, and also like having important representation in the book. Like a lot of horror movies are white, very white, and obviously like we are also white, but we want to show diverse experiences. We want to show that like different types of people can be put into the same situation, and that those people's life experience help them through the game. And that also includes like their race and how they are treated in the world.
And then even going further, because obviously Terrence has that knee problem sort of being used, but then we sort of go flip to another side, and I might be a little bit off base on this, so correct me, but then we go to Kat, and it seems to me that Kat has somewhat of a drug issue per se, and that there's something going on, and there's also a relationship with her mom, and now she's under a medical thing, and I don't know if I'm on base or not at this point, but something seems to be going on with that with Kat, and that's a very interesting scenario on that side, because now we have what I read it as her possibly pill popping to some degree. And so correct me if I'm wrong at any point, just feel free to interrupt me. But,
she's more like she's on like Adderall. She's like that's more of her thing, where she's been studying, and she does have a thing with her mom. It's actually Lisa. Kat is the friend. That might have gotten a little confused, but
so it's
no problem. She's that person that is going and doing all the things for her family as opposed to doing them for her, and so she doesn't really. She's just studying and trying to be the dutiful daughter, and so she's doing so. Each person in of our leads or in our ensemble have some sort of issue, drug, and I don't want to say drug, but like PTSD, bipolar, those kinds of issues that kind of help actually create their immunity to this situation. And that's kind of how that ends up working.
And the reason why I bring up her is because obviously this provides another different insight, and she's sort of got that pre-med background coming into it, very book smart, very much inside a book. obviously on Adderall, studying extensively, and then we get the complete opposite of Terrence. And so now we get a whole circumstance where, we get an athlete, we have somebody who is extremely book smart, and then we have a veteran who is very much combat ready in this circumstance, and sort of acts quick and then says, hey, let's just get out of the shitstorm and then we'll deal with the consequences secondary. And then we get, the third person or the fourth person is Jarrett. And obviously Jarrett is Oz's best friend. And Jarrett sort of, and the way I read it was the one who was encouraging Oz to come to this party, and sort of, I don't know what Jarrett knows. I don't know if Jarrett got sort of caught into this or if Jarrett knew, but obviously that's an interesting circumstance for Jarrett to be in, because Jarrett was the impetus for probably a bunch of these people to come to this party. And then we're dealing with that now too. And obviously everybody's sort of scattered throughout the game in many ways. And so now it's a matter of, how do we deal with this, and how does he even deal with that? I was saying, hey, what did I just get all my friends into?
Yeah. And to go back to Lisa for a second, she actually has one of the biggest arcs of like all the characters, because in the beginning pages you can see like she's actually afraid. Like, we wanted to show like someone in a horror situation that was like afraid of the situation for real. And like didn't necessarily really know how to deal with it.
Not like Barbara. Not a Barbara.
Not a Barbara. But like that's an authentic reaction. Like, she doesn't know how to use a gun. Like, she's not suddenly a badass when all this goes down. Like she develops kind of like into a badass out of necessity, because like she is fighting to survive just like everybody else.
Yeah.
And obviously one of the things that all throughout all these levels is that there's puzzles, and obviously zombies, and these creatures are coming in different types. And obviously in order to escape, if escape is even possible, because who knows at this point if escape is possible, or if everybody's going to get killed in this twisted game. But it's this idea that in order to move up a level, or get out of the level, or get into a protection position in that level, you have to solve a bunch of puzzles and riddles and other things. And this is where like the soul element comes into it, is that you now have to solve all that stuff. And so what is that like to really start solving that and analyzing that, and using wit and brain and life experiences, and then also fending off these zombies that may or may not be getting in the way, or may be a consequence of particular moves per se, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in this.
Yeah, the puzzles were actually the most fun part to build, because we got to draw on all of our life experience. Dan's actually a philosophy major, so we got to put like a philosophy puzzle in there. Like, he already mentioned that we like took a page out of video games, like where you have to like insert like the key with the different colors, and like going back to Lara Croft and stuff like that. We were like inspired across the spectrum with the puzzles, but it added that element that sometimes you don't get to see in like horror films, or even specifically zombie movies, because zombies are such like a visceral experience. Like, you are physically battling for your life. And most of the time, the zombies are usually pretty dumb, or like they can be outwitted in some way, because they are undead. Like, they are not necessarily, unless you're Zack Snyder, they are not using their brains.
They're not now like, forming up, and it's like, all right, now they're militarized. Although it does look pretty cool. But,
it does.
And even to add to this, because obviously in a video game, the player controls a lot of the narrative. And in a movie, the director controls a big chunk of the narrative. And when you're dealing with puzzles in movies and video games, and even role-playing games to some degree, a lot of the narrative is controlled. When you're reading a comic book and writing a comic book, there's certain things that are controlled by the writer and the artist and the people producing the book. But when I read a comic book, I have a lot of control on how fast somebody speaks, how they sound, how much time actually takes place between certain events. Something could take 30 seconds, it could take 49 seconds. And so creating puzzles and keeping that in mind, what was that like? Because I could make determinations while I'm reading this that a puzzle took an extra minute to solve, and that the suspense was building for that entire minute before something happened. And so puzzles have to work in that way. And it is tricky to write puzzles, especially when a reader has a lot of control, which in comics they do.
Well, that's something that because this is my first writing of a comic, and Emily really had to explain to me in between the panels.
A very different medium than so many other things.
Exactly.
And just even branch off of that, a lot of people storyboard stuff. That's why a lot of people sometimes start with TV scripts or movie scripts and then get into comics. And then a lot of times people start with a comic and then shoot into a movie or television script, because they do branch out from each other. They're all cousins, but they are all different.
They're very different, very different. And so she, because I think in movies, because I watch so many movies and stuff, and she would be like, no, that doesn't work on this. And I think that with some of the puzzles, I really wanted to, I think my favorite puzzle is the third puzzle, because I think it's just different. But there's things about, writing those things and trying to actually come up with something unique or, specific that would then translate it's not easy.
No, we went through a bunch of puzzles. We really worked very hard on them, because it is a visual medium, and the puzzles that Dan had in his head were very complex at some points.
Yeah.
But you only have a certain number of panels to tell it, and you also have to tell it visually with, like you said, with the time element as well. So it's we have to show it from different angles. It has to make sense how you solve it. And so at the third puzzle, which actually involves a scale, was the most difficult one to explain.
Yeah, to explain it is the most difficult. I think that the most I like that puzzle a lot, but it was kind of a unique puzzle in my head, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like. The other ones are kind of one's more of a riddle, the other one's kind of more of a classic thing. You kind of get it, it's like keys. But the third one was just kind of different, and I liked that there's also different ways to solve it. And so that way, how you solve it is also indicative of what you get. I think that was something that was unique. What's that?
Like a true video game. You actually it's a branching narrative at that point.
Yeah.
So that's cool, and that's always fun. I remember those Goosebump books where you have to choose your own adventure. Those are always fun. Those are always fun. And those are great stories, and they have the nice shiny covers. And this is me going back to fourth grade, everybody, when I was like nine. So branching covers and all that fun stuff. So obviously, cool stuff that can be done with branching narratives and all that stuff. So I love this concept. I think it's really cool to take that video game stuff in there. And obviously, we sort of mentioned it already, but Oz winds up discovering a bunch of people as he starts conquering levels and moving up the food ladder all the way up. And so unique bonds start being formed and unique decisions start occurring to deal with these puzzles and to analyze them and to conquer them, and things that you wouldn't expect sort of happen. So what was that like, getting the opportunity to put unlikely people together, and unlikely, possibly, people who might be on good terms but not friends, and then that forming together, and then people who might have been friends might not become friends or might be having friction with each other because you're in a unique situation. And high density and high intense situations tend to show what people are made of, and then to show their true nature of what they are.
Exactly.
And that's just general life, not to mention that in this entire story, I think we start figuring out, once these people start teaming up, where everybody exactly stands.
And that was, I think that a lot of times we were talking a little bit about Chris Rock before, right? Chris Rock has a great joke. He talks about a tiger doesn't go crazy, a tiger goes tiger, but a human goes crazy, right? A tiger just is what he is. A zombie is what it is. Whether it's a rage zombie or World War Z or a slow Romero, it is a monster that wants to do X, right? But when you get into people are evil. People use people. People betray people. People eat other people sometimes because they're really fucked up. People are evil. I don't think demons are evil. Demons are just demons. Demons are demons. They do what they do because that's what they are. Humans have the capacity for evil. And I wanted to show that in most zombie movies, it's really the other humans that are really what you're at odds with. Like The Walking Dead, it's like
spoiler alert, everybody.
Yeah.
The real enemy is not the zombies. Once you get past issue 100, you start to actually understand. And even issue probably, I think, like 60 with Dale, and I'm going to leave it at that. You start to figure out who is really the bad guys. And then you figure out who's even worse than the bad guys sometimes. And again, issue 100. Yeah. Just saying, issue 100. It's a big deal.
What do good people have to do to survive? You might think you're a good person, but you're put into that extreme situation. And that's where the veteran angle comes in again, because they have actually experienced that. They have experienced that in real life. They have been put into extreme situations where you might think you are a certain type of person, but then someone is shooting at you. Someone is trying to kill you or blow you up. And it does actually show you what kind of person you are. So they have experienced that firsthand.
Yeah.
And so we really get a glimpse into these four people. We also get a glimpse into Leg, and where Leg's loyalty lies, and all sorts of stuff. And it's super fascinating because we have, and I don't know if there's a confrontation with the game runners per se. And I don't, there might be, there might not be. There might be something with Battle Royale. I don't know if you read Battle Royale. Great book. If you haven't read it, Playboy recommends it. They gave it 5 bunnies for a reason, and they gave the manga 5 bunnies, which is, I think, the only manga they've ever rated, which shows and it means something. Also, the book's cover is really cool because in between the two main characters, it's like they're silhouetted in red, and there's a shotgun in between them. It's an awesome cover for so many reasons, but I digress. But the concept is that, well, dealing with the game runners is always a fun one in books and how that runs. So I don't know if there is something going on with that, but obviously very, very, very cool stuff can happen. And obviously I don't know exactly what occurs. I have a sense of where things are going. Obviously there's a bunch of puzzles, and well, that's also in play to some degree. And so, and I'm sure we find out more about why this is happening, who's involved, beyond the obvious answer of being entertained and money. Beyond that, unless there's nothing beyond that, which is perfectly acceptable, because being entertained and money is fun. I could tell you, because I like being entertained and I like having money. but I mean, I'm not saying anything all that controversial at the moment. But I digress. So where does this story exactly go? Is it self-contained? Because there's a lot of stuff where it can go. Is there more to it? Is there a sequel? Or is it that this graphic novel is the whole story and then it's put down and on the shelf for the time being? Because obviously that's out there. And what can people expect with this? Because there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, definitely. So we did write it as a self-contained graphic novel. So it does have a finish, and we can't tell you the end because that would spoil it. And it would spoil the final confrontation. You'll have to come see what happens at the end. But we did think of this as a whole world.
Yeah.
That, like, because we love grounded stories and grounded horror, that it inspired a whole, like, set of stories that we could tell in the future as well.
Yeah, and we could either go on with these characters,
Mhm.
or we could split off from the characters. And that was something that, like, like you talked about Saw before. I never had an idea that was actually a franchise. Most of my stories have always been, just kind of a thing. And it was like, oh, we could continue on with these characters, and then they could be like brought back into a different situation.
Mhm.
Or there could be like Zombie Island, or like whatever. We could do a different thing altogether with an entire
Do the Death Race franchise.
Yeah, pretty much. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was kind of something that, like, I was really excited about when I came up with the idea. And then Emily was like, there's also more stories with these characters too. And then we started to workshop those.
And even to go off of that, because obviously some people love franchising for a reason, and there are real advantages. I mean, there's money involved in it. There's the concept that you could do 3 books, and then you could keep kickstarting it, and then you go to a con and you could sell issues 1, 2, and 3 all at the same time and get into a graphic novel, and then you get 5 kickstarters out of doing 4 of them essentially.
Mhm.
And I've seen that, and there's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not criticizing anybody, because I have plenty of friends who do 6-issue stories, and then they have a 7th Kickstarter, which is the graphic novel kickstarting of it. But also, if you're one and done, you can kill off characters left and right. You don't have to worry too much about the fact saying, oh, what am I going to do for issues 7 through 12? And
Right.
there are real advantages to both. Because it's fun, because all of a sudden you create a character you love, and then, that character, now you killed them off. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that, in this kind of novel. But at the same time, you're like, man, I killed off this character in such a way that it left an impact. So it's super interesting when you're dealing with that, and spin-offs, or even just world building, because I've seen people they build the world in their first thing, they kill off 4 out of the 5 characters, and then all of a sudden that 5th character escapes or is doing something else, and then there you go, you have your world, which is Resident Evil for you. So there you go, the perfect zombie book,
Right.
slash comic / video game out there in Village looks awesome.
Yeah.
Just saying that a 9-foot, Victorian vampire with Freddy Krueger claws. Just saying, But what was that like in your heads? Because that is a super interesting debate in content creating.
We definitely wanted the zombie game is a full-length, like, graphic novel in our minds. Like, when we like adapted it to comics, we wanted to make sure that the part that I always hated was, like, forcing that ending to the issue where it's like I have to write to a cliffhanger, like, for this issue. And even though, like, our story can be broken up kind of like per level, like, we wanted to tell a whole and complete story that wasn't, like, forced.
There's a nice thing to that, because that also changes writing, where I read issue by issue. Mainstream, I read issue by issue. Indie, I could tell you, reading issue by issue indie every 3 months is hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. It is difficult. There are points where I back out of Kickstarters after issue 2 because I can't wait. And I don't want to wait. And I know people who do 4 a year, which is a lot, every 3 months. And even then, it's going to take you, 18 months to do a 6-issue arc. That's a year and a half. That's a long time to wait when DC and Marvel and Image put out books every single month. I mean, they beat you by 3x. But when somebody releases me a whole graphic novel, it's a easier thing for me to consume. I like to binge read, and on top of that, the industry has changed, where people like Dan Jurgen, who basically killed off Superman in the '90s, he says at cons, he has like 12-year-olds coming up to him saying, "Hey, could you sign my first comic?" And it's a complete graphic novel. It's not a comic book because they like to read graphic novels. And I think that's a real advantage for this project, is that we have a complete work done. We have, 100 and plus 120 plus pages of content. And I know it's more than 120, but it's this idea that this is completely done. And now I'm getting a whole story. So when I'm backing this, I understand that I'm getting a chunk of a story. And that's crucial.
Yeah, it's not, we didn't write to like, oh, there's going to be, another one in 6 months and another book or whatnot. We wrote it as a complete, finished story. Now these people can live and they can go on and all these other things, the ones that survive.
Unless you're completely telling lines so that people
everybody dies. But liar. But I don't like that, and I wanted people to have it in their hand and like finish it and get to experience the whole thing and not be waiting. And that we talked a lot about it. Should we do it as episodes? Should we do it?
And it even goes further, because all of a sudden, anything could happen when you're issue 3 in. I mean, somebody could die, and not in the book, in real life. I want to make that clarification. Where that's happened in series, where there are series in mainstream comics that have never been finished because they're on issue 5, and then the writer dies. There's been comics where legitly the writer or the artist died before issue 1 came out, and they finished issue 1, but the art wasn't done on it. And then you have a whole completely complicated entity. What do we do now? Because we have a 5-issue series.
Just like what happened with Robert Jordan in the Wheel of Time. He ended up dying. They had to bring in a whole writer to finish the series. It was a mess.
And so obviously I like complete works because I think it's the right way to do it. I get why it's not always done that way, because it is a whole different beast to write it. It is a different entity with art and production wise and building it out, and that it does take more skill. There is a hell of a lot more risk involved in a complete work project, but also you're getting a complete work project to people.
And we got so lucky that our artist really stuck with us, because that's another huge problem I have with issues where not only do you have some cover artists who might be amazing, but does not reflect the book in any way, shape, or form.
My project, but I digress.
She was like, "That's not happening. That is not happening."
But we also, Pablo Ashala is an amazing artist who stuck with us for a very long time to get this finished. We didn't have to switch artists in the middle. It is consistent. It's beautiful throughout. And that was very important to us too, that we were going to tell a complete story that has an ending that, like Dan said, could go on if you wanted, but there is a definitive ending to the book. You will feel very satisfied that the art is amazing throughout the whole thing. And you have an ending to this book. Just hopefully you want to see more in the future.
I'll give a shout out to Lucas, our letterer too. Because he was able, the biggest thing about the art is that it wasn't anything that we thought it should look like when we first started this project at all. And I just absolutely love what he did. It's just that it was one of those times where you had it in your mind. We were going to go indie, and it was going to be black and whites, and it was going to be pencil sketches.
Kind of more to this.
Yeah. And so we have Pablo's amazing art, and then Lucas came in and then was able to put these filters on the and was able to match and bring in different colors for the sound effects and it just works so well.
Has their own color. It's great.
Yeah.
Level
So,
has their own color of zombie sounds.
and it's just really, there's a lot of little details in that, and I think that it took us a long time to get it done. Like that was the hardest part. Like you were saying, it's like, we could have pushed out a couple of issues, but it was like I wanted it to be done, and so when you got it, it was done. Like I wanted it to be a finished thing, and that was very important to both of us, and that the art and the artwork reflected what you were actually going to get, and we got that from Pablo, and he's awesome, and just we're so lucky that he was that he stuck with us, and we stuck with him.
Yeah, and it was great. Like one of the pages that you put up, where they're like being doused with the drug again in kind of like blues and greens. Like the page on the right here was like intensely complex to both draw and letter, because it's a conversation back and forth, but you're showing action through time. And so this is like one of the best of how like Pablo and Lucas came together, because it's a pretty complex like page to letter. Like you don't want to interfere with the time sequence to show that like this zombie is actually turning back into a human. But so you have to have that balance between like great lettering to like show what's happening and like be able to actually see like what's occurring in the action as well. And then hopefully at the end of the page, it's heartbreaking to see like they're being doused with the drug again.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of little tricks and tips and things that are thrown into this book. And obviously even going even further into some inside baseball, because I love talking inside baseball with comics. I know so much about this, and I've never actually produced a comic book ever. And I may or may not be working on something that's for everyone else to figure out. And if I do produce it, I'm going to have no friends in the industry after it's produced. But I'm going to digress on that point for a little bit. Everybody's going to hate me, and I'm happy to take all the hate. I'm going to hate because I didn't think of it first. But yeah, so producing a graphic novel is very different than producing a comic book as far as printing it, costs of printing it, binding it. Obviously, I think most people expect a graphic novel to be a little bit more substantial, be a better cover, take a little bit more of a beating than a comic book. Also, there is not a collector's market per se for most graphic novels. Very few graphic novels appreciate in value, and they only appreciate under two positions. Either they had a low print run and weren't reprinted, they're a first edition copy, they're a special signed copy type of thing, or that they're in extreme limited quantities either on Kickstarter or have something to that, or something like that is going on, or they're just been out of print forever. There's only a few reasons why graphic novels appreciate. I know this because I'm big into comic book investing. Everybody take my word for it. If you don't believe me, you can go check out my other show. I talk all about this stuff. It's called the Comic Book Investing System Podcast. Literally, I talk about comic book investing as much as I can. And I'm making everybody a better comic book investor, and the process is completely free. So please go check that out if you have the time and you want to know more about what I'm talking about. But anyhow, what was that like? Figuring out where to print it, how to bind it, how to make sure it's actually what it's supposed to be. Because the worst thing you want is having really good art on shitty paper. That's the worst thing in the world. It's bad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's no CGC for us. There's no slabbing happening, and that was okay. That was a choice. Like we're not like I would say like we like the literary value. We want people to actually like read it and pick it up. So you're right. Like it was very important for us to partner with like a great printer to like really think about the actual book layout. We even have like a fun little thing in between the chapters. It kind of comes up like a video game screen, and then some chapters have like a loading screen, kind of like your game is loading like into the chapter. And so we were able to partner with a great printer called McGuiness in Pennsylvania, and they have taken care of a lot of indie publishers and indie creators. And they were recommended to us because we have friends on the convention circuit, and they've taken really great care of us. They are super indie friendly. They are very responsive, and hopefully we are getting our proof this week. Very excited.
I'm so excited.
It's very nerve-wracking, but yeah, it was very important to us to like pick correct paper weight, and that like we had a cover that could really shine. Pablo did our cover as well, obviously, since my hatred of not having same art on your cover as in your book. But yeah, we worked really hard to like make it hefty, to make it actually like readable, that it was long enough that it felt like a book, but not too long that we didn't go bankrupt. But trust me, like there were, if we had like infinite time and infinite amount of money, we would have geeked out even further. Like there were more pieces.
There's a lot of cool stuff that's actually happening in graphic novels. Yeah. I don't know if you know the graphic novel Cthulhu Invades Oz by Travis Gibb.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
And so if you back the Kickstarter, the cover actually glows in the dark.
Yes, that's so cool. I know.
I don't know if you guys know Tyler James.
Yes.
From Comic Tribe. He was on, and obviously he does his entire Kickstarter class, and it's a really good class. I haven't taken it yet, but I probably should at some point. And when it opens up, I'm probably going to sign up for it and pay whatever it costs, because it's supposed to be an amazing class. He does awesome stuff with covers. He does cool stuff, and to give an idea, if anybody has picked up the Cyborg 009 graphic novel, Tyler James does a bunch of cool stuff like that. And I know that everybody wonder what that is, so go look it up. So super cool stuff is being done with covers, and especially in graphic novels. And I think while we're in the digital age of comics, and that is the king of everything in many ways, print is far from dead. It's just getting creative with it. And so, especially with graphic novels, because things got to stop. I mean, DNA's been on, David Nakayama's been on. I've had Sun Kumanaki on this show. I've had a bunch of other people like Jason Metcalf, Kanan White's been on, and I'm dropping cover artists for a reason. Eve Ass has been on. Dawn Mateague is coming on tomorrow. JP Roth is coming on also tomorrow with Dawn. Obviously, I'm a big Zenoscope guy, and covers do sell. And so cover art is super important in that way, and having something catchy does make the difference between a book being bought and sold. Whether what's inside the book is irrelevant in many ways sometimes. It's the idea that what's inside the book. And also it's nice when you have covers that are actually reflecting what's inside the book. Super cool. And not disrespecting any cover that doesn't reflect inside the book, but it's kind of cool when covers actually reflect what's inside the book.
That's why we picked like very primal colors. We picked white, black, and red for our cover, because it is like that, and it is horror. Like and you know what you're getting up front. Like we went through a ton of cover ideas, and I know Dan really wanted basically an 80s movie poster version.
Fright Night
version of our cover. So maybe that will be our special edition.
Exactly.
To get a Fright Night type cover for our book.
So obviously I want to table all that right there, and I do want to get into rewards, because we're bordering on the rewards side now, and that's what people want to know. Bunch of rewards are out there. So obviously very cheap postcards. I think it's like what, $5 for 3 postcards.
Yeah.
And I think you could color it in. I think this is sort of one of them.
Yes. Yep. That's one of our postcards there. And we have a giant like range of rewards, like everything from $5 all the way up to our like mega special Bookstagram box, which we were able to release after we funded. It has a whole bunch of like horror authors, and a whole bunch of all of our other rewards. So it's a bunch of different tiers. We have a coffee table book. We have a companion coloring book that actually goes with the graphic novel.
She drew it and she did the whole thing. So, going
through some of these rewards.
Lake Zombie Adventures. Yes, it's
let's talk about some of these rewards because there's a lot of stuff going on. So obviously you could pick up the book digitally, which, as I stated, I think digital is king. There was a debate, and I obviously was on one side, and a bunch of the people that I interviewed were completely on the other side 2 years ago, and they were all wrong. They were all wrong because I think digital is the king of everything. I think if we're not doing anything digital, this is very much a digital product, what we're doing right now. And I was doing digital before COVID, and when COVID hit, I got all in on digital, and I think it's the king of everything, and I think that it's going to stay that way indefinitely. So obviously a bunch of digital rewards. So that's something that you guys offer. Then you offer a bunch of digital, I guess, fast rewards, which is the book and some other digital comics and some other, I guess, short stories and some other cool stuff is thrown into that. So that's kind of cool for people who want more horror stuff, because one of the things that happened at Barnes & Noble that's a problem is that they used to have buy 2 books, get a third one free. And they actually ended that policy because what they discovered is that people have a hard enough time finding 1 book to read, let alone 2 books they want to read, let alone 3 books they want to read. The problem isn't that, and then they would have that with the classics, and people weren't buying 2 books because they legitimately could only find 1. It was a wasted, promotion. And so obviously that's super cool. And I think that goes into your mega pack as well, where you're providing a lot of answers probably to people who say, I like horror, but I don't know what to read in this subject.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we had an awesome partner and like Ben Temple Smith. Oh. Sorry, not Ben Temple. Ben Goldsmith, where we were able to put his issue 1 of the Seance Room into our digital rewards. And Aliana Poe gave us a great literary short story set for your digital rewards as well. So we just got so lucky that like great comics people and great horror people helped contribute to our campaign as well. So and if you get a digital reward, like we just wanted a lot of bang for your buck. We wanted to make sure that you got to like explore a cool comic artist that's not just us, and that because we love the medium. We love horror and we love comics. We wanted to give you even more.
And then even going further off of this, because obviously as you tier up, there's a bunch of prints that also are out there that you can get. And obviously people appreciate prints. And so that's something that's cool too. And I'm just going to list some names here. I'm probably going to get them all wrong. So bear with me, everybody. So we had Gis Cabrera, I want to say, or is it?
Jose Cabrera did a couple
again.
No, that's fine. Did a couple like classic horror movie prints, and for us a Frankenstein print and a Dracula print. And Pablo did a bunch of prints for us as well.
And so that's also something that can be added on and put into this, and it comes with your book. And it also, with the book, is there a hardcover edition and a softcover edition, or is it all just soft cover?
All soft cover for now. We wanted to save the hardcover for like the special like foil edition.
I really wanted the hardcover. It's it's something that we still I still pine over, but,
Yeah.
Because a lot of people now with graphic novel releases do a special edition hardcover, and that's a very different book, and then they also do soft covers, and then they also do standard editions. They do special editions, and I go back to Travis because that's what he did. There was 3 or 4 different versions of the same book, and there's a hardcover, like glow in the dark, and then there's a standard edition for just everybody sort of else. And he ordered books, and you can only get the glow in the dark on Kickstarter, and he had a few extra, which made a lot of sense. And what was cool about him is that he was about $200 short of meeting that glow in the dark, and he just did it anyway, which was awesome. So we didn't meet that stretch goal, but he said, hey, $200 is close enough, where for the $200 it cost him out of his pocket, it really wasn't that expensive. Considering, and everybody was so close that it was legitimately, everybody was like pushing, and like 50 new backers came in at the last like hours. Super cool moment. Super cool. It looks awesome too, which is super cool. But yeah, no, hardcovers with stuff like this is the way to go, and definitely throw it in there.
Yeah, we do have a couple of goals that we want to meet first, and we're almost actually to our first stretch goal. All of our backers are going to get a super awesome like vinyl sticker, but what we haven't announced is that if we do reach our first stretch goal, we have partnered with an amazing company called Macroverse. They have taken our book to the next level of digital comics.
Next level of digital comics here.
So
what is that next level? Because I could drop like 10 different versions of the next level. QR codes in there, music in there, VR is big, and that's out there. My friends with Ballyscallon did that, and they actually built an app for their comic, which is dope. And what they did with their comic, for those who don't know, is that you could have backed and things could have been drawn in specifically for you on VR Inc. And also they were doing sketches in VR, and you could buy original art that you could hang up on your wall. It looks good as it is. And then you have their app, which is ultimately supported because running an app technically isn't that expensive anymore. You could then put it up. So obviously there's a million different ways you could go digital to the next level. You could go, and what they did is that with their VR, and I don't know if this is your intention and this is the next level, I'm just throwing this out there. One of the things that they did is that there were scenes off that were not in the comic, that were almost prequel panels to their VR. So a lot of cool stuff going on. I've seen QR codes. I've seen complete soundtracks with comics. I've seen, things that are almost webtoon comics. I've seen the comics become digitalized, which is super cool. Hopefully you're not building NFTs out of this. I will end this interview right now.
No, Macroverse does actually have their own app, and they have actually a bunch of creators on there, and we were lucky enough to partner with them because they are really storytellers at heart. So like in the beginning of digital comics, like it was really weird and awkward. And they have actually built up their own app in a different way because it's a different way of storytelling. So it is much more cinematic, actually, like a movie. And you get to move, tap, and swipe actually through our story, like at your own pace. That makes it much more like a movie. And that is a product of like the technology they've developed on their app. Jason Brubaker is on Macroverse as well. So there's a bunch of like cool creators, but we fell in love with them because of the way that they tell stories. Like,
I'm sure they're gonna hate me when I put my project out there too. So. My project is the antithesis of everything that this is meant to be.
Perfect.
Great. We love it.
So obviously that is something that is also coming down the pike, and reading digital comics and changing that up. So obviously that's out there too, and I'm not going to push too hard on that before I get you and me in trouble. So I'm going to get myself in enough trouble without anybody's help.
Exactly.
It's what I do best, and I didn't say I was going to be poor doing it, though. I just want to make that clear. I didn't say I was going to be poor doing it. I didn't say I'm doing it for free either.
Right.
I want to make that perfect clear to everybody, so that when we look back 6 months from now, everybody,
Yeah.
Told you so.
Oh,
right.
yes.
So obviously a bunch of stretch goals are coming.
Yes.
You're pretty close to those stretch goals. That was my next question. And obviously I think we answered that. So that's a check mark next to that question. And then obviously a lot of cool stuff's going on with this. And so if you like anything you heard, everybody, back it. Super important to do that. And now I want to back out of all this, and I do want to talk about Kickstarter as a whole, because Kickstarter in the last 4 years has changed, and the last 2 it's become very different. And I had this conversation last night, and I've had it like for the past probably 14 months, where obviously big names have come into Kickstarter, big companies have come into Kickstarter. You know, there's a company right now that has a relationship with Marvel on Kickstarter that just did $1.5 million for a game, and it's still going on strong. Obviously, Keanu Reeves, I think, what was it, $1.4 million?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of money. Todd McFarlane did $5 million for his toy, and I know it's not comic related. It's comic related, not comic books.
Right.
But then you have things like Curse Words and Scott Snyder, and also more projects are now on Kickstarter. And obviously, I have a budget, and this is how I do my Kickstarters. Is that I got anywhere from $40 to $60 a month to back projects. So what winds up happening is that once I back a project, that money is gone, even though I didn't get charged until the end of it.
Yeah.
And so I have to be very, very selective, and it does change what I back on when things get funded, how fast they get funded, what they look like, who's working on the project, their track record. I am more lenient to back a particular project if it's already funded. I'm also more lenient, and I don't know if lenient is the right word, but I'm more probable, I should say, to back it if particular artists are involved in it, if the concept looks good, or if it reaches 50% or more within its first 4 days. And there's all these barometers that mean that it will succeed. And not to mention that I actually sort of bookmark mentally 15 projects, and then I might pick one out of those 15 to back, because I don't have you know a lot of money to play in Kickstarter per se. I think $60 is a pretty fair number every month. I think it's a pretty fair number. I mean, we're talking $720 on Kickstarter. I think it's a lot of money actually to throw on Kickstarter and indie comics, plus on whatever else I order. So how do you both feel Kickstarter has changed? Because obviously I've gotten a lot more familiar with Kickstarter in the last 2.5 years than any time before, but I've noticed massive changes. And well, when you have more projects also coming in, not everything's going to get funded per se. And obviously with conventions not happening either, economics getting interesting, stimulus check definitely probably helped to some degree. Kickstarter, it helped everything probably, but obviously things are complicated, probably more so now than ever before.
There are definitely positives and negatives to it. Having done one ancient Kickstarter a long time ago, it has changed.
Because I know you two are new to it more so than other people who have had like 15 of them done.
Right. Yeah. And I had, a lot has changed on the platform for the better and for the worst. This time, I was actually able to find a lot more creators who work together, which is amazing. I found a great small group of 4 other ladies who were putting up their Kickstarter at the same time, and we were able to actually work together to help support each other's campaigns. That is not something I saw in the past from other creators.
There's more grouping for sure. There are also rival groups, and there is politics, and I don't mean Democrat, Republican, I mean certain groups do not interact well with each other.
Right.
In Kickstarter community, and I know a bunch of people who are on opposite sides.
Yeah. I mean, because it has actually turned into a business. Creators are able to use the platform to make a self-publishing business, and you can interact directly with fans, and publishers have a huge role in the industry, and they always will. But especially for like maybe stories that are a little more off to the side, or like for newer creators, like it is an opportunity. Like if you, for instance, like take Tyler James like comic course, or Russell Nolte like also has a great course about like how you effectively like use Kickstarter. You can be a little fish and you can actually connect to your fans.
Yeah. And like the idea that I don't know, there is a limit to like what people can, if somebody's going to like either fund my project or Keanu Reeves's project, he's probably going to fund Keanu Reeves's project anyway. And would I have gotten that person?
Because one of the things that's going on is that, and this is the debate, is that does everybody belong on Kickstarter? Is the big question. And
Right.
I went on a show and I said yes. I went on Comic Bolt and I was like, and I made a real case, and everybody deserves to be on Kickstarter because Kickstarter isn't just comics.
Yeah.
You can go Kickstarter a tripod. And my dad's into photography, and so some guy who's this great photographer kickstarted his book, his photography book. It's awesome, expensive book. It was like a $90 book. Cool book. My point is that doesn't compete with comics.
Right.
So he deserves to be on Kickstarter, but so does Keanu Reeves in many ways. But also the other question that's sort of going on right now is saying, well, are the big players coming in suffocating out the little players? And are they taking up all the oxygen in the room? And there is legitimate points on that, meaning that because I have $60. Now, I actually look at stories. I'm part of this indie comic community, and I also look for awesome artists and variants and a variety of other stuff. And I'm a little bit different than other people look, because I'm looking for awesome cover art that I legitimately can get CGC and hang up on my wall, and then people talk, and I have a particular good girl art style I like that I want. So I'm looking for certain art on Kickstarter from people who I don't know that I want to know. For a variety of reasons, both from a business perspective and from a personal perspective and a talking point perspective, and because I can perspective. So I'm a little bit different than a bunch of people. But at the same time, that is that. And what I said is that I think we opened up Pandora's box with letting, or I didn't let anybody in, but with big names coming in, Pandora's box has been opened, and we don't know how this is going to play out with all of these creators, and the community enabled it because Kickstarter is an open source platform. As far as that, it's an open source funnel. And that's what it is. And so the community enabled it by backing and giving $1.4 million to Berserker, and giving $120,000 to Curse Words, and giving $300,000, almost $400,000 technically to Scott Snyder's Nocturna. And that's fine if the community allows it, but there's consequences for those decisions, and we don't know what they are yet with Kickstarter.
I don't think you're going to know those, like. Yeah. But the fact is that at this moment we funded, so it's still working, at least for us. But I'll tell you, Emily worked her ass off, getting this going and setting up the tiers and taking the classes and all that kind of stuff. So it's like we don't have that name, and that name's going to draw a lot of people. But maybe those people do check something else out. But if that person is just there for, and I love Keanu Reeves, I think I love that guy. But if they're coming just specifically for that, they're not going to fund my book anyway. So it's like, I feel that's kind of a weird, like fatalistic aspect of it.
I think it leads to a bigger question, is that what is coming behind Keanu Reeves? Because Keanu Reeves isn't the question in this entire situation, at least the way I view it. And I'm into business. This is my entire business. When I'm buying and selling a lot of money with comics, and then when you're moving books a lot, and I'm moving anywhere from 40 to 80 books a month, at profit margins that are anywhere from 20 to 30% on every single book, I'm keeping my finger on the pulse, because I'm just waiting for Marvel, DC, boom, And that's where this gets super complicated, is that what happens then, because it's not the issue anymore of, I guess the issue becomes for me is that it's okay when they're funding Green Lantern issue 5 on Kickstarter, and that's a cool thought to some degree, and now it's direct to consumer, but also all these people are moving out of Diamond. I mean, the writing is on the wall where certain things are going, and I think it's going to be both good and bad. I really do, and I think it's going to be awesome, but I think it's going to be super complicated. And I'm going to be entertained by watching it. I don't know about anybody else here, but I think it's going to be good for indie, because Keanu Reeves' book and your book are on the exact same playing level on Kickstarter, technically. Yeah. As far as their entry point. I didn't say they're their end point, but the entry point and the opportunity point is on the exact same level.
It's a double-edged sword. It's going to be good and bad at the same time for different things, and there are going to be consequences that people do not realize in both good and bad ways, because there are going to be books that will not go, and they should be able to, because they are not going to be profitable enough for certain people. Like they could have been. It's kind of like different networks that are, bound together in a bundle. Those bundles will no longer be together, and therefore that Green Lantern #5 is not going to supplement a more experimental book. That is now not going to happen. But there are going to be those independent people that can then possibly get those people that would want to read that book.
I have a theory where it's going to all go. I have a pretty good theory where it's all going to go. And the theory has already existed, and it's a little thing called Peacock. Peacock, and what happened last week was this little event called WrestleMania. WWE Network is on Peacock, and what's starting to happen, I think this is what's going to ultimately happen, where I think we're going to get a bunch of images popping up, where I think that's where all this is heading. I think we're going to have collaboration, and we're going to have essentially a conglomerate agreement where everybody's going to LLC under one big branch of 6 minor companies that operate somewhat independently but have complete financing through, or have a overhead LLC with subsidiaries. Then I think that's where we're going with this, because when DC and Marvel and all those come in, that's where this is all going. No question about it. And that's what I think is bound to happen. And if it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, it's going to happen in the next 10. That's what I think, because it makes complete sense. And we're going to have a bunch of images, and I think that's going to be the best consequence out of this. And I think it's going to be awesome, because then, because that's what gets people competitive against DC, Marvel, Image, is that when a bunch of companies form up, and basically a bunch of imprints that operate financially independent but have a corporate holding company essentially over them, super cool concept to compete. But that's what I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, the industry needs a shakeup. We've been doing
so cool when it happens
for decades and decades and decades, and we see I just read an article about the one of the most successful runs of Winter Soldier, and how the creator makes more money on the residuals for the cameo he had in the TV show than from actually creating that comic book run. The imbalance is so pronounced. Something has to change.
Stan Lee made more money by signing than by creating Spider-Man.
Right. I mean, that was all what POW was about. POW Entertainment was about, was extending his legacy through cons and through very specific books, because he was a personality at
Conversely, Audrey Meadows on The Honeymooners was the only one out of Jackie Gleason and the other 2 that basically assured that she got a royalty. So The Honeymooners, pretty much after they ended and all the episodes, she was getting a piece of the action all the way till she died. And I don't know how royalties work in death per se, to her family, but possibly her family might still be receiving royalties at least once a year for 24 hours. I don't know about anything else. And then with streaming, it gets super complicated. So obviously a lot of cool stuff I think is going to happen. And now to exit this controversy, let's talk about religion.
Interview over.
So, and I do want to talk about the sister question to this, because obviously COVID has messed up a lot of stuff. And I don't know how many cons the two of you have gone to, and I'm in a very different position than Comic Creators because I'm a panelist at a lot of cons. Not paid, but I still do a lot of fan panels. I've done about 50 fan panels on a variety of topics, ranging from practically everything in anime to comic book investing. My favorite topic, money, making money with comic books. It's an awesome concept. Everybody should go do it because money's fun and comics are fun, so you can't lose. But obviously, kidding aside, San Diego didn't happen last year, didn't happen this year. New York Comic Con didn't happen. Emerald City didn't happen. WonderCon didn't happen. Bunch of cons didn't happen. Is the point here. So how have the two of you been affected by that? How has it affected even going to cons, speaking at a con, pushing out books, even building out publicity for your Kickstarter? Because even going to a con where you don't have something, you just start talking to people and, well, you can start drumming up some business or even getting a feel for a concept. You know, if I might be speaking to somebody in the hallway and I was speaking about what I'm trying to build in my book that I want to build, and somebody's like, oh, dude, this is great. Like, this is a cool concept. They gave me a few suggestions, and it was super helpful. And I was just getting a feel for what a few people might feel about something, just as an aside while waiting online. And so what has that been like for the two of you with this, and even marketing it out there? Because comic creators need to be seen and heard sometimes, and it's great that we're doing this, but you also need to see somebody behind a table because it is a different experience. And like, you need to almost have that, oh, you're actually real moment. You know, and it sounds funny, but I believe it's true. Like when I'm speaking and somebody knows my podcast, like, oh, you're actually a real person. Yeah. It's a very weird thing. And so obviously, how is that all factored in? Because it's also selling books at cons is super helpful too. And there is something there, and also just networking with indie creators and even possibly celebrities and other people and things like that. And then, so how is that all factoring into everything that's going on? Because things aren't coming back so quickly, I feel. They're starting to, but it's going to take a lot of time.
Go ahead.
Yeah, funnily enough, our third date was a comic book convention. But I agree, it's an experience that can't be replicated anywhere else. And a big part of this book launch was actually launching across the country
or even launching in a comic book shop and doing a signing.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a whole tricky ball game as well.
Right. I did the convention circuit for many years, just as I got out of school, and have done a majority of the ones in the country. And like I said, there's no replicating that experience. No virtual convention is going to be the same. And the world has actually changed. Just the fact that they're proposing some version of San Diego over Thanksgiving, you would never, that would not be a thing.
Let me ask a legitimate question. Who wants to go to a con on Thanksgiving weekend? I sure as fuck don't.
No,
I don't care about Thanksgiving, so I'm fine. But I know that a lot of people, it's I don't really like my family, so that works out really good for me. But
yeah, but I don't want to see other people on Thanksgiving either. Who would
to me, it just seems so this is the worst weekend for shopping. People are batshit crazy that weekend, and there's so many sales on
Black Friday
and that weekend and Cyber Monday, and it's also Christmas season, and nobody's gonna have money.
Yeah.
Like let's say the economy turned around the next 90 days, still nobody's gonna have money to spend. I don't really care, because guess what? From Thanksgiving to December 24th, money is gone with everybody because you're buying gifts for your family in America.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and we had actually even planned out international conventions and You know, like it's sad because like some of the larger ones have really like become more about the big two, and about like movie premieres and things like that. So we
Not
actually
about the big two. No. They have not been about the big two. They have been about the big movie two.
well, true. Yes, true.
Comics have shrunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everything else has become bigger.
Right.
You know when that happened? It's actually super interesting. There's one man who's responsible for it.
Oh, tell us this story.
This happened in 2001 with The Phantom Menace with George Lucas. The whole thing on how this became bigger and how pop culture came into all these cons was because he bought a bunch of tables at San Diego Comic-Con to promote The Phantom Menace. And the following year, every single celebrity in 2002 started showing up. And then pretty much for the next 3 years, that got built out to what it is today. And that's why you have celebrity alleys.
Yeah.
So you have Star Wars to blame for that. You have Star Wars to thank and blame for that. It's actually something that is not spoken about. And it's a very, very interesting fact. So it's super cool. And that's how it started, because they realized, and all these people realized, saying, wait a second, there's all this Star Wars stuff here, and there's all this Star Wars memorabilia and Star Wars people signing and all this stuff. And when you have like 15 tables all conglomerated next to each other, sort of built out that pop culture wing, and then Star Trek copied it, and then every big franchise copied it, and that's why we have what we have now in Celebrity Alley. It's cool though. I like it. I think it's interesting, but super cool thing. So thank you, George Lucas, or curse him if you're angry about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we wanted to go to some of the smaller conventions where people actually are looking for comics, you know, SPX and some of the Stumptown and some of the more indie ones. Hey, I'm not against people making a buck or like, you know, holding a great like overall pop culture convention, but like I also want to meet people who want to read comics. So
my best cons have always been at cons that cater to 500 people or less.
Right.
I can make money at bigger cons because they have celebrities and I get stuff signed, graded, and I sell it. And I pay for it and they go straight on eBay, but I'm not paying for it. If a creator charges me money to sign it and then I got to sell it, whoever's buying is paying for it and then some. It's just the way it is. It's called business. But even still, my best experiences have always been at smaller cons that actually are interested in comics. Like I met Joe Sinnott, you know, who's big, and he was sketching for like $15 on an 11 by like 7 piece of paper for like $10-15 of anything you wanted. I've been at small cons with David Lloyd, who was doing V for Vendetta sketches for $10, you know, with a crayon of all things. So, and that was at a small con. So there you go. So, and even going further off of this, what do you think needs to happen for cons to come back? Because obviously they're saying November, and it's going to be very interesting what they do at a smaller con. But where do you think cons need to go to come back, be safe? And do you think they're ever going to go back to where they were back 2019 levels?
Yeah, I mean, cons are actually already happening. Like one of the horror authors that is in our Bookstagram package is at a convention right now. And he is like out selling his books right now at a convention. So they are happening, but people have to get vaccinated. Like there is no other way. There's no other way that.
You also think that cons are going to have to deal with masks, sanitation, attendance limits, you know, things like that. You know, there's an entire thing. So I'm in Connecticut. I'm a New York Mets fan. There's 8,000 people, and then you can't pay with cash. It's all credit card.
The Lakers have their first game with fans. No cash, no eating or drinking inside the arena. You must wear a mask. You have to have proof of vaccination or a negative test. And I think that those things are going to be they're going to be more pronounced now and then get laxed later, because things will, you know, it's like people who've wanted to get vaccinated will, and those who don't, you know, they won't. But you know, people will still want their money. So there will be things that will finally will open up. I don't think it'll ever go back to what it was. in a lot of ways, but it'll be, you know, a little bit. It'll just be different. There will be the new different norm,
Yeah.
which, you know, I don't know if it's going to be masks or they're going to just need to have better ventilation in all these places, or like more of a like lacking of just a giant.
So one of the things that me and my guest last night were speaking about, my second guest, is that with attendance limits, the attendance limits are going to be including all the volunteers, all the panelists, all the vendors. This is something that I think people don't understand, that if you have a 10,000 person limit and you got 1,500 people who are in all those categories, you're having 8,500 people there, not 10,000.
Right. I mean, luckily the industry is very creative. Like, maybe it will spawn even more conventions, you know, like if they, or double or multiple dates, like throughout the year. Like, there are a billion ways like around these things that will help keep us safe and be creative and have a great experience. So it's just, do we have the will to do them?
Well, it's also, you know, because there won't be as many people in certain ways, so that could enhance in both ways, right? You know, it could be much more intimate with, you know, getting to know, like, and as opposed to just being so crowded in certain situations. So it's, I mean, and also understanding, and people, you know, we have to adjust us, like, and just tweak things, and it can just be different, but it could be actually better in some ways.
I also feel that what's going to happen is that I think cons are going to actually have to compete for value. I think that, you know, if you're going to spend $90 on a comic ticket, or you're spending $1,000 on a table, I think cons are going to have to provide better value. And I think they're going to have to compete, because what I'm hoping for is more cons, smaller cons, more competition. Because I tend to be libertarian. I tend to think that capitalism is the answer here. I tend to think that if you have 5 cons within 50 miles of you, all happening at the same time, and you're right in the center, you're going to go to the con that's going to provide you the most value. And I think that's going to force competition. And I think that's going to force cons to get creative, bring in better guests, also say, hey, how much can I charge on a ticket? How do I market this? How do I make sure that my creators get taken care of? How do I make sure my panelists get taken care of? How do I make sure that I get the most attendees here in a safe way? How do I make people feel like they have the best experience? You know, and that's what I'm hoping for, because I think that's what's going to happen. I think that, you know, and I also think that people are somewhat fed up with San Diego. I've heard bad stories in the last few years about San Diego. I've heard comic shops. I think it was Mile High was there for 46 years in a row, and they sat, I think, 2019 out because it was getting too expensive.
Yeah.
And so I think a bunch of people are getting fed up because they're not making the money that they were once making. And I think small cons are going to come in and take a big chunk. What was it, in 2011? Image took 11% from Marvel and DC out of nowhere within like a 2-year time period, and has maintained a good chunk of that, if not more. If they might have even taken more now. And I think a bunch of cons and small cons are going to go do that. And so that's what I'm hoping for, because I want to speak at smaller cons. I don't like talking at big cons. Big cons are fun because I stream all my panels. I get more views on my stream panels than I do in the room that I'm in. So it's crazy, but I digress. We've been speaking for a while now, so obviously, I don't know if you guys have anything else you want to add to the con world. I spoke a lot, and you could detest anything you'd like to detest or challenge. I'm more than happy to accept that challenge gracefully, and I'll just walk my head in shame away.
No, it's good, man. It's going to just be, it's going to be interesting. I think that's the best way to describe it, is that we can theorize, but it's going to evolve. And how that's going to evolve will take a bit of time to kind of shake itself out.
Yeah.
And so on that note, and obviously evolution is a necessity, you have 2 choices in life. You either evolve or you die.
Right.
It's one or the other. So on that note, though, I do want to give both of you an opportunity to promote yourself. Where can people find, the Kickstarter? Where can people find Facebook pages, Twitter pages, Instagram pages? I would say you have a TikTok, but I'm going to take the gamble that I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. All the cool kids have TikTok.
Yeah, I'm more afraid of the Chinese and stealing all my information.
Leg had a TikTok for a short amount of time, but I was forced to take it down. So, you can find us on Instagram at The Zombie Game. Same for Facebook, The Zombie Game. If you search Kickstarter, it's at, guess what? The Zombie Game. We made a nice short bit.ly link as well. So it's bit.ly/The Zombie Game. We tried to keep it super, super simple, but you can always go to our Instagram account and find us there.
Also, basically, it was just because I couldn't remember anything, so she had to make it really idiot-proof.
There you go.
Well, also the nice thing about Kickstarter, and I don't know whose name it's created under, but if you type in creators' names, also things pop up too. So obviously, if you type in certain creators' names, things pop up. I'm pretty sure that if you type in zombie, Kickstarter will make some recommendations, and I'm pretty sure it's in one of those recommendations as well. So obviously, there's a lot of stuff that, a lot of ways to find it. So keep that in mind, everybody, that if you're looking and you just say, oh, zombie, and you just type it on Kickstarter, chances are it's going to pop up.
Yeah. We're also a project they love, so you can find us in that category too.
And also, I'll be attaching a link down below promoting this out as well for people to find it on Kickstarter. And then obviously, I'm pretty sure that from Kickstarter, it could be attached in many other ways to all of the other social media. So that's super important. And on that note, I've been saying it, and I think I've been saying it almost 160 times in the last 13 months. 13 months I've been doing this, live streaming, interviews, and all sorts of fun stuff. And I'm getting really tired of saying it, everybody, so please do it. You got to back indie. You have to back indie projects, indie creators. Typically, the best way to do that is backing them on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or other crowdfunding platforms. And obviously, if you have the money, whether it's $5 or it's $100, every little bit counts. Super helpful. Nobody says no to digital. Obviously, a lot of people want you to back the physical stuff, but if money's tight, you got a little bit of money, back the digital. It's better than nothing. So please go do that. And if money is tight, which I get completely, obviously, COVID's been rough for a lot of people. It's been rough financially, and I want everybody to take care of your wife, your boyfriend, your husband, your girlfriend, your dog, your kids. If you got kids, please take care of them. Make sure your mortgage is paid for. Make sure your rent is paid for. Make sure you're up to date on that. If you're behind on that, pay it. It'll save you in the long run.
Pay it.
This is the free financial advice of this show. It'll save you in the long run. Make sure if you got debt, take care of that too.
You don't need to put this on a credit card for 24.99% APR. Please don't do that.
Just share
it on your debit card.
Share the link.
Much easier.
Yes.
But all joking aside, make sure that you also have money for the next month, and make sure that you're in a financially safe place, because it is super important right now. We don't know exactly when this is going to be over and what the damage is going to be done, and where people are going to be come July. It looks like we're turning the corner, but obviously there's a lot of stuff happening. And so if you're in that circumstance, you should be following people on social media, because it is super important, engaging on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, sharing the Kickstarter, liking posts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you find a TikTok, you never know, they might be lying. I'm just saying.
Literally, like if you like this and you can't support us financially, and I totally understand that if you're in that position, just say, hey, look, this is a cool thing. Throw it on Facebook, tweet it out, whatever it is. That's cool, and that could just be the way you back us, and that's totally awesome.
Also, there's another very important thing, and it's the email list. Because the first 25 pages, if you sign up for their email list, is free. And so let's say you're on the fence with this Kickstarter. And I did say we were going to talk about it. I didn't forget. But let's say you're on the fence. You're like, hey, I don't really know where this is going. If you actually give your email, they're going to send you the first 25 pages, and you can get a real feel for what this comic is, where it's going. You can see parts of the art. And it is super important. And it is helpful. And even just keeping that email open, not unsubscribing from that email is massively important. Because why that's important is because they can send you updates, they can keep you informed. After the Kickstarter is over, they might have a bunch of extra books and you might be in a better financial position. Or let's say the next project comes in 6 months from now, you can pick up that project because hopefully you're going to be in a better financial position in that you're going to be able to back a project and informed, or just kept informed of everything that's going on with this project. And so it is super important. And also you sort of get a little bit of a try before you buy type of thing. So back that email. I don't know where people can find that email page to sign up for the email list.
If you go onto our Kickstarter and you just click the link at the top that gives you like the free link to the preview, like it will take you to our book funnel page. So it'll do all the work for you if you click that link at the top of our Kickstarter. And
I'm pretty sure my favorite company did not back or create that funnel, but I digress. I will forgive you and I will give you a pass on this one. I'm ClickFunnels for life. So there we go. But I digress once again. And on that note, I'm going to give both of you the final word.
We are so thankful for all our backers so far. We're so thankful that we found like fun people who really like believe in our project.
Yeah, and like I said before, just if you can't, back us financially, it's totally cool. Tweet us out, whatever. And thank you. I mean, for sitting through this. It's an hour and 46 minutes. If you're still listening to me, I mean, that's pretty amazing. You should give yourself a hand for that.
Yes.
And congratulations. And thank you. Just, thanks for like letting us be in your community and being a part of like indie creations, because that is one thing about like all this craziness is that the indie community has just been awesome and very supportive and just very interested, and that's really cool because most people just they tend to just want to smack things around and say but like with real indie stuff, people are just really interested in the process and in the storytelling, and we're just really psyched about that. So thank you very much.
And I couldn't have said it any better than myself.